Joining us now, Liz Peek. Liz, good to have you.
Good morning. Happy to be joining you. You obviously are very fired up, and I have to tell you, I didn't see that news about CNN. This is what, the multi-candidate town hall?
They had this 5-hour marathon town hall, like from 7 to midnight, and all these candidates come on, and it was the most boring thing. Their ratings were low. They Storage Wars and American Pickers beat them 2-1.
Well, look, I think people are having a hard time kind of separating wheat from chaff, and I'm not even sure which is which, but I think there are now 21 people, I think, in the race, Seth Moulton being the last person to join. And I think what's actually kind of sad about this is that every one of them is trying to out-progressive the others to get attention. I mean, Elizabeth Warren is coming up with a new policy designed to separate you from your hard-earned money. Every single day she has a new idea about how to raise taxes on nearly everybody and vowing to give things away to people who vote for her, essentially. I mean, I was actually kind of amused. In the Journal this morning, there was a piece about in Egypt, Sisi's government was offering food, like bottles of cooking oil, to people who came and voted for his constitutional reform. And, you know, obviously the tone of the article, and I'm sure others like it, was sort of snippy, like, wow, really a third world country, how low. Well, what's the difference? I mean, you're offering free college. What millennial isn't going to say, wow, that sounds like a terrific idea. Here I am burdened by student debt. What a wonderful idea just to have someone wave a magic wand and have other people pay my debts. And that's, you know, sadly, John, there really just isn't much reckoning with the ultimate results of these things. And I think what's even more offensive is that people like Elizabeth Warren will never admit that we have this giant student loan problem, mainly because of the government's intervention in what otherwise used to be sort of an orderly process of people saving up to go to college, taking out sort of minimal loans, which were made by private financial institutions. Now, of course, they're issued by the government. There's no control whatsoever on who they're being made to or for what purpose. So, you know, basically, we have yet another big problem. The same thing, you know, not so long ago, we had a huge real estate bubble, again, created by the government's push for broader home ownership. They never learn that all these interventions create unintended consequences and even bigger problems down the road.
Well, you know, Liz, three things here. It just, the like you said, Liz Peek, wave the magic wand, it all goes away, it doesn't matter, there's no accountability. That's number one. I mean, the second thing is what is amazing to me is not one of these Democratic candidates have said, you know what the problem is? State tuition increases are out of control. This is really the issue.
Why? Because
right?
they're forcing, because they're pushing everybody to go to college without any reckoning for the fact that the colleges haven't changed size. Too much demand, not enough supply. And, by the way, and I've seen this up close at a college that I'm somewhat involved with, yes, the colleges, have all these mandates laid on them that you have to have this kind of authority and this kind of official, and the number of non-teaching administrative personnel, I would guess in most colleges, has just been incredible. You have to have a diversity officer, you have to have the, cybersecurity officer, this one, that one, and all of a sudden you're out of budget, and guess what? Kids aren't learning much.
Well, there's a lot of issues. And, Terry McAuliffe, who's not running for president, former Democratic governor of Virginia, got on my show before he decided not to run because his party has just left him in the dust because he actually wants like jobs and accountability and pipelines and energy and things that normal adults want. He's way out of step now. But he said, why should somebody else pay for my son to go to college? Like, how does that make any sense? And the other thing he says, then there's absolutely no accountability for the student whatsoever.
Right.
Because it's like, go to class, don't go to class, show up, don't show up, get an A, get a D, get kicked out, don't get kicked out, get a C. Who cares, right? You're not paying for it. It's like anything you don't pay for, you just, you don't take it as seriously as something that you got, so you have no skin in the game.
Yeah,
so,
I was thinking about that yesterday because
No one
Remember
cares.
the old saw about how you really had to pay for psychoanalysis because otherwise you weren't bought into it. You had no, as you say, no skin in the game. You have to have some investment in something like that to make it worthwhile, to make you pay attention to it. And I would say, and I thought about that exactly so with college. I mean, if a kid has absolutely no responsibility for putting that money to work, I mean, contrast that to the son of an immigrant family. So many immigrant families come here partly so that their kids can get an education, and they work like crazy to make that happen. And don't you think that kid has a sense of familial responsibility to make sure they take advantage of that education? I mean, we saw it in every school my kids ever went to. The hardest working kids were often the ones who knew that their family had worked so hard to get them there. So I agree with you. You give kids a free pass, say, what difference does it make? And the likelihood of them really burrowing in and taking advantage of that educational opportunity is much reduced. Are there kids still who will do well? Of course. But I think I really feel like there's just the word accountability that you used, it just doesn't exist much anymore. And more people are not expected to save for their retirement or their schooling or any of the things that traditionally have been privately funded because Big Daddy government's going to take care of you.
Well, that is really the problem that you just said. No accountability, no skin in the game. Do whatever you want. And it seems to be this track towards millennials today, which is, look, you don't have to be accountable for things, right? Like the way we did, like the baby boomers did, or the greatest generation, or whatever it is. Just a lack of accountability. Run up debt, do whatever you want, and like Elizabeth Warren said last night, if you make under $250,000, I'll just wipe it away. Well, what? Okay, then wipe away my mortgage too.
Right.
Wipe away my
exactly.
credit card debt. Wipe away my debt for remodeling my garage or whatever. I just wipe it wipe it all out. Right?
Yeah.
Let somebody else pay for it. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, someone
Absolutely,
tweeted this morning,
incredible.
who's going to pay for that? Well, everyone's going to pay for it. And basically, all of these programs, free health care, free college, free this and that, in effect, you're demanding that people who have some savings, who are working hard and been successful, pay more and more of their wealth, and that's what Elizabeth Warren wants to do, of course, is tax wealth, which we have never done in this country because it has proved a disastrous approach everywhere it has been tried. In fact, without digressing, one of the Macron's problems, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France's problems, is that he removed the wealth tax when he took office because he was losing people. It's just like New York City's losing people who were offended by the enormously high taxes in New York City. People were fleeing France. If you tax wealth, you'll get less of it. People will leave the country. People will leave your state. That message doesn't seem to resonate very much, but the answer is she won't be happy. Bernie Sanders won't be happy until everybody's at the same level. And you know what? That doesn't mean everyone will be well off. It means everyone will be poor because you take away the incentive for people to do well. I mean, it's the most common sense thing in the world, but that doesn't seem very compelling when you're out on the stump. It's just, honestly, I don't know how we've gotten to this place in this country, except, actually, that's not true. I do know how we've gotten here, and one reason is that colleges and universities have never taught millennials anything good about capitalism, anything about the way the free market works and works better than a government-planned economy. So the younger generations really have no idea what the history of socialism and communism is compared to the history of capitalism. They don't know how to make an informed choice, and that is the fault of people our age who have not sat at the kitchen table with their kids and talked to them about these issues, and who serve on the boards of these universities and have not demanded balance in terms of what is being taught. There is no balance. And, John, just to amuse yourself someday, go on the website of Yale or Harvard and look at the courses they offer, for example, in American history. You will be appalled. There are no examples of courses in American history. There's history of women's rights. There's history of slavery. There's history of the Vietnam War. All issues which to the people teaching those courses are much more important than the wonderful things that America has done and the progress this country has made and the hundreds of millions of people who have been successful in this country. That they don't like so much. And so the message out of our universities is appalling. I mean, I have to say. And the other thing is, these schools continue to be larded with generosity by their donors because they're hopeful their kids will get into schools, and they never make any demands. They just give them the money, and then the universities are completely untethered from any responsibility to save that, use that money wisely. It's really disheartening, I have to say.
John Fredericks Radio Network live at Colonial Downs grand opening today. We're with Liz Peek. She's a noted writer, a former Wall Street analyst, one of the first most successful female analysts at a big Wall Street firm, investment banker, and now she's an author and a columnist, also appears on Fox News. Go to Liz Peek, LizPeek.com. Follow Liz on Twitter, at Liz Peek. Really easy to do, Fox News and The Hill. Liz, why is the left now teaching that America basically sucks as a country? I mean, what is the purpose of that?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it was a response to the feel-good politics of the 50s and then the very disruptive 60s. I don't know. I guess people sort of settled on a, need to bear our faults as opposed to laud our victories in this country. I think that's kind of what gained attention in intelligentsia circles. But there's a certain nihilistic aspect to it, in the sense that no one really wants to believe that we're successful. And I have to say, John, the thing that really bugs me the most these days, which is a little off topic, is the ability of Democrats to absolutely straight-faced lie about what's going on in this country today under President Trump. This offends me only because they talk all the time about how Trump exaggerates, he lies, he misrepresents things. If you follow Chuck Schumer on Twitter, which I recommend because it's sort of a daily dose of what the other side is saying and how maliciously they say it, Chuck Schumer every day talks about economic stagnation of the middle class, how Trump is really driving down the prospects for middle-class people. And, it isn't true. But somehow that just doesn't, nobody holds him to be truthful. And honestly, I know this is sort of the Girl Scout in me. It shocks me when that happens. Dianne Feinstein is the same way. She just put out a tweet the other day about the tax cuts, the GOP tax cuts, talking about how they really hurt the middle class, and she was hearing from a lot of California voters about that. Well, California voters who are unhappy about the tax cuts are those making tens of millions of dollars who don't any longer get to deduct California's extremely high taxes, the SALT taxes, state and local taxes. Those are the people in California being hurt by the GOP tax bill, not middle class. We know those people got a tax cut. But, from before the bill was signed, Schumer and his allies in the Democratic Party have been lying about the tax bill. Even the New York Times wrote a piece finally saying, face it, folks, you got a tax cut, because the fog of misinformation coming from the Democrat messaging machine was so unbelievably intense. I don't really understand how politicians, and I'm sure on the right this goes on too, I don't see how they can live with themselves just actually putting out bald-faced lies day after day. It's, as I say, it's not only disheartening, it's sort of disgusting.
It's gross, no question about it. And it's the hate America crowd, and they've been lying to the American people now since Trump got elected. It started with the Russian hoax. It goes to tax cuts. They just lie, and they have a complicit a legacy lying mainstream fake news media that carries their water like an offensive line in football. And Newt Gingrich said this in 93 in 95 when he took over. I didn't believe him, but he's right. I got to go. Liz, follow at Liz Peak, at Liz Peak.